Linux has come a long way. A modern Linux desktop user doesn't really have to use the command line unless they want to. Most modern distributions offer easy-to-use graphical tools for accomplishing pretty much anything that a modern user would want to do. But just because you don't have to use the command line, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. The Linux command line is an incredibly powerful tool that can give you full control over whatever you do in Linux, whether you're a desktop user or a server administrator. In this series, I'm going to be giving you a tour of the Linux command line. We're going to start from scratch, assuming you've never used the command line at all, but we'll be quickly moving on to intermediate and even advanced features. So, let's get started. Welcome to Mastering the Linux CLI from Scratch, Episode 1. Although this series is going to be delving into some advanced command line features, as the title implies, we will be starting from scratch, and scratch is today. Let's look at what we're going to be covering today. Today, we will be covering navigation of the command line using ls and cd, working with files such as copying them with cp, moving and renaming them with mv, creating directories with mkdir, viewing file contents with cat, removing files and folders with rm and rmdir, redirecting output to files with the greater than operator, hidden files, and pagination with more and less. We'll also look at how you can get help using man pages and other commands such as who am I. After you log in to your Linux desktop, the first thing you'll want to do is actually get access to a terminal. Now, I'm using Pop! OS here, but the process is pretty similar for every other Linux distribution. In the case of Pop! OS, I actually have a terminal icon down here, but if you're using GNOME, you can go to Applications and then Terminal from here, or simply search for Terminal to find one. If you're using KDE, you can get to the terminal from the menu. Now, if you're using a server variant of Linux, there's a good chance that when you open up your computer, you will not see a graphical interface as shown here, but instead you'll see something like this. So this is a TTY, that's short for teletype actually, and it comes from historical usage. However, you can still log in using your username and password. And as you can see here, we are in a full command prompt. Now in my case, I'm going to be sticking to the desktop, since that's what most desktop users will be using after all. However, if you're using this from a pure command line environment, the commands will obviously be the same. Now I've purposefully made my command prompt big here so that it's easier for you guys to see. So as you can see, when we open up a terminal, we get a prompt. The prompt is this part here. Now, the exact look, colors, and feel of your prompt may be different according to the distribution, but there's typically some things which are in common. So first, this part here is your username, the user you logged in with, which in my case is Keith. This part here, following the @ is the host name of your computer. Every Linux system, and in fact, every computer has a host name, a name which identifies it typically on the network. I have the default here for Pop! OS, which is of course Pop! OS. Following the colon, there is the directory that you're currently in. So remember guys that a directory and a folder are the same thing. Now this tilde symbol that you can see here indicates that I am in the home directory. More on that later. Finally, there's a symbol at the end. Right now it's a $sign, meaning I'm running commands as a normal user. If that were a hashtag instead, it means I'm running commands with elevated privileges or root. Again, I'll be explaining more about elevated privileges later on. So one of the first commands we'll use is pwd, print working directory. So this tells us which folder we're currently in. And as you can see, I'm told that I am in the home Keith folder, otherwise known as my home directory. So every user on a Linux system every normal user that is, will get a home folder similar to this. Now, besides being shown like this, a shortcut to refer to your home directory is the tilde symbol, which is why in my prompt I'm being told that I am in that folder right now. In Linux and Unix-based systems, the root of your hard disk is represented by a /. So just like on Windows your hard disk might be called C:, on Linux your hard disks, irrespective of how many you have, are referred to with root. So here I'm typing the command cd /, meaning take me to the root of the hard disk. As you can see in my prompt now, I am shown a /, which indicates that that is where I am. And if I type pwd again, you can see that I am shown that I am in the root folder. Now is a good time to tell you that you can use the cursor keys to navigate between your commands. For example, if I press the up arrow, you can see that the command that I just typed is displayed, and if I press it again, the command that I typed previously is shown, and so on. The down arrow goes forward through the list, so this is really useful if you need to type similar commands in rapid succession. Now, if I want to go back to my home directory, which is /home/keat, I can say cd home, change directory to home. And as you can see, my prompt shows that I am in /home, and then cd keat. And as you can see now, the prompt changes to a tilde, and pwd shows that I am in home keat. Now let's go back to root momentarily. Obviously, I can get to the home directory by typing in the entire path. For example, cd space /home/keat. And that takes me straight into my home folder as shown here with pwd. I'll once again go back to the root folder, and this time I'll type cd tilde. And as you can see, I am taken straight to my home directory. So the tilde symbol is always a shortcut for you to get back to your home directory. Within Linux and Unix, you can use the .. symbol to navigate relative to the current folder. For example, I am currently in /home/keat. Now, what if I wanted to get out of the keat folder and go into the parent folder, which is home? Well, in that case, I can type cd space .. And I am now in the home folder. So this .. is a relative directory. Okay, so this tells Linux, listen, relative to my current position, which is home keat, go up by 1 folder. I can use this to get to any other part of my system relative to my current location. For example, I can say cd .. Now going up 1 folder from home takes me to the root folder. And then I can say once you're in the root folder, go into the etc folder, and then go into the CA certificates folder. And as you can see, that takes me to that location. So you can always navigate to somewhere using relative links. Now, the opposite of using relative paths is to use canonical paths. Canonical paths are simply paths that starts with your root. So again, if I want to go to cd home keat, as you can see, I'm telling Linux exactly where to go. Start at the root folder, go to the home directory, and then in there, go to keat. And that takes me back to my home folder. If at any point you want a fresh start or you have too much stuff in your terminal, you can type clear. And as you can see, this clears what you've typed to present an empty prompt. Now, one thing you should know about the command line on Linux is that it is case sensitive. For example, I'm going to type cd .. This takes me back to my home folder. And then I'm going to type cd keat. Now, as you can see, I get an error, no such file or directory. Now, the reason for this is that my home folder is keat with a small k, but this time I typed keat with a capital K, so that won't work. Remember that all commands as well as file and folder names in Linux are case sensitive. For example, if I type cd keat, you'll see I also get an error, command not found. And that's because the change directory command is cd in lowercase and not cd in uppercase as shown here. So I'll type cd keat to get back to my home directory, and then I'll type clear to get a nice clear terminal. Now it's good to start getting some terminology straight away here. So when I type cd, that is a command. Now, when I type cd, I need to tell Linux where I want to go. So for example, I can say /home. So in the case of this command here, cd is obviously the command, whereas /home is an argument. So many commands on the command line require an argument to specify how that command should actually work. Now, of course, you can type cd without any arguments, and in most distributions of Linux, that defaults to taking you to your home folder as shown here. Not all commands require arguments. For example, there is this command, who am I? So basically, this tells me what my username is. And as you can see, it's saying that my username is Keat. Okay, so now that I'm in my home folder, how can I see the contents of this folder? The easiest way is to type ls, which is short for list. And as you can see, I get a list of stuff that is in my home folder. Now, in most modern versions of Linux, this output is colored, with certain common colors referring to certain types of files or folders. For example, on my system with the default color scheme, the dark blue color that you see indicates that what I'm looking at here is a bunch of folders. Now, if I want to go into one of these folders, for example, the pictures folder, I can type cd pictures, remembering to type the capital P. And now if I type ls in here, you can see that I have a folder called wallpapers and a file called wallpaper_tg.png, which is the wallpaper that I'm currently using on my desktop. So now that I'm in the pictures folder, I want to go back to my home directory, so I can type cd ... which will take me up one level to go back to my home folder, and typing ls, as you can see, shows the contents of this directory. So let's look at how I can create a new directory or a new folder. This is very easy. I simply need to use mkdir, which is short for make directory, and then I can specify as an argument the name of the directory that I want to create. So since this is episode 1, I'm going to create a directory called episode 1, not to be confused with the worst Star Trek episode ever. So now if I type ls, you can see that there's my new folder there, episode 1. And to go into that folder, I'll type cd episode 1. Now, if you have long folder names or you're navigating a complicated structure, it helps to use the tab key. So for example, if I type capital E, you'll notice that there are no other folders in my home directory that start with E. So if I press tab, notice how the command line automatically completes the name of my folder to episode 1. Now, in cases where there's more than one item, you'll need to type further characters. For example, you'll notice that I have desktop, documents, and downloads all starting with a capital D. So when I type D and press tab, you'll see that nothing happens. Now, if I press tab again, the command line shows me the possibilities that I have. So if I want to go to my downloads folder, I'll type DO, but that could also be confused with documents, DOW, and then I can press tab. And once there's no more possibilities, the command line will automatically complete the rest of the folder or file name. Now in my case, I want to go to the episode 1 folder, so I'll type E, tab, and now I am inside the episode 1 folder. When using mkdir, you can give multiple directories as arguments. For example, I can say mkdir, folder 1, folder 2, folder 3. And now if I type ls, you'll see that 3 empty folders have been created in the current directory. You can also use mkdir to create a path, meaning create a folder within another folder. Okay, so first I'll show you how not to do it. So let's say I wanted to create a folder called folder 4, and inside folder 4 I want to create folder A. Now as you can see, it gives me an error. It says I cannot create the folder A in the folder 4 because folder 4 doesn't exist. So in order to do this, we need to say mkdir -p. Now dash is also sometimes called minus. Guys, it's the same symbol on a computer. So mkdir -p folder 4 / folder A. And as you can see now, I get no error. So there's a few things you should note from this last command. Firstly, Linux typically tends to complain when something is wrong and say nothing when everything is fine. So in the case of the command line, it's typically no news is good news. As you can see, when the command worked successfully, I got no output. But when I made a mistake in my command, I got an error message. Secondly, when using the mkdir command this time, you'll notice I added -p or -p, call it whatever you want. This is called an option. An option changes the way that a command works. For example, in this case, the -p option tells mkdir to create an entire path of folders if they don't already exist. So mkdir will create folder 4 and within it create folder A. So again, with the terminology, mkdir is a command, -p is an option, and the folders that I'm creating, in this case, are arguments. Okay, let's go ahead and clear this. Now let's say I wanted to create a folder inside my episode 1 folder that has a space in its name. So for example, I'm going to create the folder Phantom Menace to stick with the theme. So I'll type mkdir Phantom Menace. Now if I type ls, you'll notice that what's happened here is that mkdir has created a folder called Menace and a folder called Phantom. It hasn't created a single folder with that name. So before we continue any further, we need to remove these folders. So we can use rmdir, which is short for remove directory. And I'll say remove Menace and remove Phantom. And so now those folders have been removed. In order to create files or folders in Linux that have a space in their name, you either need to use a / or you need to use quotes. For example, I can do mkdir Phantom / Menace. And now if I look at the list of folders, you'll see that there is a folder called Phantom Menace, okay, and it's shown in quotes. If I want to remove that folder, rmdir Phantom Menace, and now that folder has been removed. Another way to create a folder with spaces is to put the name inside quotes. For example, mkdir, open quote, Phantom Menace. And so now if I look at the list of folders, there it is, and it's misspelled here. There should be an N, but you get the point. So as you can see, working with files and folders that have spaces in their name is a bit of a pain. And so this is why you'll know when someone is a command line user, since they'll typically never put space in their folder or file names. Typically what we do is we use an underscore or some other character. For example, mkdir Phantom _Menace. And that is now much easier to work with in the command line. Now, one thing we often do when we're using a computer is copy a file from one place to another. So let's see how we're going to do this with the terminal. I know that I have a wallpaper in my pictures folder, and I'd like to copy that wallpaper to my episode 1 folder. So I'm first going to clear just so we have a clear terminal. And then I'm going to type cp, so that's the copy command. Now I know that relative to my current location, I need to get out of episode 1 and go to the pictures folder. So I'll type ... which will take me to my home folder, /pictures /wallpaper_tg.png. Tab really helps to autocomplete the file name. Now, if I want to simply copy that file into the current directory, I can type dot. And what that will do is simply place the file in my current location. The dot or period or full stop symbol in Linux always symbolizes the current folder, whereas dot dot always symbolizes the parent folder. So I'll press enter. And now if I type ls, you'll see that I have that wallpaper here in this folder. Now pressing up, if I wanted to rename the file after it's copied, I can simply specify a new name here. So I'm going to call it new name.png. So now I have two copies of my wallpaper, one called wallpaper.tg and one called new name.png. Now what about renaming a file? Well, in Linux, that is done using the move command. Now, move, MV, is the closest thing you can see is cut on a Windows or macOS system. So this is technically used to cut a file from one place and put it in another. Now, to rename a file in Linux, we also use cut. We can simply leave it in the same location, but specify a new name. So for example, I'm going to move the new name.png file and rename it to techguru.png. So now using ls, you can see that new name.png is no longer there, and instead we have techguru.png. Now, of course, the move command can also be used to actually move stuff. So for example, I can say move techguru.png ... So that means move the techguru.png file to my parent folder, which in my case is the home directory. So now if I use ls, you can see that techguru.png is no longer there. Now if I want to confirm that the file has gone to the parent folder, I could use cd to go to the parent folder and then type ls. But I can directly see the contents of my parent folder by giving an argument to ls, ls ... This is showing me the contents of my parent folder without me having to actually go there. And as you can see, techguru.png is there. Now I want to remove that file from my home folder, so I can use the command rm, which is short for remove. Now, a word of warning, guys. When you're working with the command line, there is no recycle bin. Okay, so stuff that you delete is deleted forever. Okay, so make sure you know what you're doing. So I'm going to remove the techguru.png file, which is in my parent folder. And now if I use ls again, you can see that the file is no longer there. Remember, however, I am still in the episode 1 folder, and if I use ls, you'll see that wallpaper.tg.png is still there. So I'm now going to move my wallpaper into the folder 1 subfolder. So to do this, I'll type mv, the file I want to move, which is wallpaper.tg.png, and the destination, which in my case is folder 1. Now if I type ls, you'll see that the file is no longer there. And if I type ls folder 1, you'll see that that folder contains the image that I have just moved there. Now this is a good place to show you some caveats when deleting a folder. So far we've been using rmdir to remove a directory. So let's say I want to delete folder 1 that, remember, contains wallpaper.tg.png. So I'll say rmdir folder 1, and as you can see, it says failed to remove folder 1, directory not empty. So rmdir can only remove a folder if that folder is empty. Let's try rm folder 1, and it says cannot remove folder 1 because it's a directory. So the default command rm can only be used to remove files. So you may be wondering, so rmdir doesn't work, rm doesn't work, how am I supposed to remove that folder? Well, there are two ways. You could go to the folder and remove every file, which is of course a pain, or you can use an option with rm -r folder 1. The -r option stands for recursive. So what this will do is it will cause rm to go into our folder and delete any files within. If the folder contains subfolders, rm will go into the subfolder and delete any files within, and so on until everything is deleted. As you can see now, I didn't get any error, which means it worked, and if I type ls, you can see that folder 1 is no longer there. We have dealt mostly with folders so far, but what about files? How do you create files? Well, we'll be looking at text editors that work on the command line later on in this series, but that doesn't mean that we can't already create a file. So I'm going to type clear, and I'm going to type ls. And as expected by now, this brings up the list of folders in the current location. However, now I'm going to type ls greater than output.txt. As you can see, this time ls doesn't produce any output on the terminal. The reason for this is that we've used this greater than symbol. This is the redirection symbol. By default, whenever you use a command, it produces standard output, known as stdout for short on Linux. That standard output is sent to the terminal so you can see it. However, by using the redirection operator, we can tell Linux to put that standard output somewhere else. And in this case, we've told it to place it in a file called output.txt. In fact, if I type ls right now, you'll see that there is that file there, output.txt. Note how in many cases, writing to a non-existing file in Linux creates that file. Now, if I want to view the contents of that file, I can use the cat command. Cat, and then as an argument, the name of the file I want to view. And as you can see, the contents of ls, instead of being displayed on the terminal, have been added to this file. We can add any text we want to a file by using echo. So normally I can type echo, and then in quotes I can type something such as hello world. As you can see, that displays hello world on the screen. However, I can redirect the output of echo into my file output.txt. As you can see, this time nothing is displayed in the terminal. If I now look at the contents of output.txt, you can see that hello world has overwritten all of the previous contents of the file. So this is something that you should bear in mind, guys. Whenever you redirect something to a file, the current contents of the file are erased. If you want to append text to the file, meaning add more lines to the file, you can use a double redirect symbol. For example, echo tech guru double redirect output.txt. And now if I view the contents of that file, you'll see that hello world is still there, but in addition, on a new line, I have tech guru. Let's create another file. I'm gonna type goodbye planet, and I'm going to save it into the file newfile.txt. And now if I look at its contents, I have goodbye planet. Let's look at the contents of this folder. As you can see, I have the two files output.txt and newfile.txt. The reason the cat command is called cat is because it is short for concatenate. Now, concatenation is a very posh word which means stick two things together, especially text. And the reason for this is because with cat I can say cat output.txt new file.txt. And as you can see, the content of both files is displayed in sequential order. First output.txt and then new file.txt. I can use this command to redirect the output to a new file, merged.txt. And so now if I look at the content of merged.txt, you'll see that it contains the output of both files. This is how the Linux command line is so powerful, guys. We use simple commands that do one thing, but do it well. But then by combining it with other commands or redirection, we can achieve new functionality that perhaps even the original designers of the command haven't even thought of. So let's create a few more files. So I'm going to echo 1 into the file file1.txt, and I'm going to repeat this with file 2 with 2 inside it, and file 3 with 3 inside it. Now, if I want to view the contents of all 3 files, I can say cat file 1, file 2, and file 3. However, there's an easier way to do that. I can say cat file underscore asterisk. The asterisk is a wildcard. This tells the Linux command line start with a file whose name begins with file underscore, and then I don't really care what comes after that underscore. All I'm interested in is a file that begins like so. We'll be talking more about wildcards later, but it's good to know about the basic asterisk wildcard even if this is the first time you're using the Linux command line. Another thing you should know about in Linux is hidden files. Hidden files are files that begin with a full stop, dot, or period, call it whatever you want. For example, let's look at ls again. And I'm going to rename my output.txt file. So I'm going to say mv output.txt dot output.txt. So I'm renaming the file so its file name starts with the dot. If I now type ls, you can see that output.txt no longer shows up in the directory listing. The file is still there, but since its file name starts with a period, it is a hidden file. If you want to view hidden files, you'll need to add the A option to ls. And as you can see, when I do that, I get the file listed as .output.txt. You will also notice some other stuff, such as the dot representing the parent folder and dot representing the current folder, with the dark blue color as they should be. The A option stands for all, which means hidden files are listed as well. If we go back to our home folder and type ls-a, you can see that there are quite a few files by default in the Linux user's home folder that are hidden. If it becomes a bit difficult to understand the file names when you have many, you can type ls-l-a. So here we are giving the list command 2 options. A, so we see all, including hidden files, and L, which means long listing, meaning give me more information about the files which are in here. And as you can see here, for each file, we get the file name, including the hidden files, but also permissions, hard links, user owner, group owner, size, and last modified time. Don't worry too much if you don't understand these details for now. We'll be covering them in a later episode. Now, rather than typing it this way, I can simply add the A to the L. that is the combination of options. And if I type enter again, you can see that the output is identical. So this is a shortcut so you don't have to type a bunch of dashes. There's two final commands I'm going to show you in today's episode. So I'm going to go back to the episode 1 folder and I'm going to type ls/etc redirect into etc.txt. So I'm going to get a listing of the folders which are in the /etc folder and redirect that into etc.txt. Now the etc folder, which stands for etc. or etc folder, contains configuration files for many Linux applications. Honestly, for now, you don't really need to know about it. The problem is that it is very long, and so if I do cat etc.txt, you'll see that the file doesn't start from the beginning. Now, if you are on the desktop, that's not really a problem, because you can use your scroller wheel to go to the top of the file. But of course, if you are in a pure command line environment, that's not going to work since you can't use your mouse. So what do? You can use a pager. So rather than cat etc.txt, I can type more etc.txt. And what happens is that the file starts, as you can see here, and only shows me as much content as will fit in my terminal. If I then press enter, I can browse and scroll using my cursor keys through the contents of the file. If I press enter, the file will go down one line at a time. If I press up or down, the file will go down or up one page at a time. When I reach the end of the file, more will automatically quit. If I want to quit whilst I'm not at the end of the file, I can press Q and that will immediately exit. Now, more is an old pager. A more modern pager with more features is called less. So I guess you could say that less is more, or less is better than more, or yeah, it gets confusing. But anyway, it's very similar. You'll type less and then etc.txt. And basically, again, I can use the up and down arrow keys to go through the file, but you'll notice that there is a colon down there. Now this accepts VI commands. Now again, you don't need to know what VI commands are right now, but the point is that once you know what they are, you will realize that this is much more powerful. So this is why it's a good idea at the start of your Linux command line journey to learn to use less rather than more. Just with more, I can type Q to exit from the file. The very last thing I'm going to show you today is how to get help. Now guys, first of all, I am a pragmatic person. So if you want to get help about a Linux command, honestly, the best place to get help is Google. So just go to Google, type a command, Linux less command, and you will find 85 million results showing you how to use less. That's how a person in 2021 does that. However, you can also get help about Linux commands from the command line itself by using the man command, which is short for manual. So simply type man and then a command which you want information about. This brings up the manual page. Now the manual is divided into chapters, but we'll see more about chapters later on. You can see that I'm showing the manual page for the less command, and that it is in section 1 of the manual, which is the general commands manual. You can see the name of the command, which is less, and it is the opposite of more. You'll frequently find these humorous notes in the Linux man page. A synopsis here tells you what options and arguments the less command accepts. Now, this can be a bit difficult to understand at first, guys. But basically what you should know, at least for now, is that anything that is inside square brackets is optional. You do not need to specify these options unless you want to do something in particular. This is, after all, why they are called options. Keep scrolling down here and you'll see a description of the less program. So see, less is a program similar to more, but it has many more features, blah, 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 blah. Then you have a list of commands, in this case, whilst using less. And further down in the manual, you will see a list of options, which is what you think. It tells you which options the less program accepts. As you can see, -A, -A, -BN, -B, and so on and so forth. So this is the be-all, end-all about everything that the less command does. So if you want a detailed reference about any command, man is where you'll get it. And you can do this about any command, for example, man mkdir. And again, this shows you the manual page for the mkdir command. In this case, quite a short one. There's so much more to learn, guys. I think that's enough for today. Okay, that's it for today. You've learned the basic commands that any Linux user should know, whether they use the command line or not. In the next episode, we'll be looking at some text utilities and plumbing. Plumbing, you say? Yes, plumbing. We'll be looking at plumbing with pipes using the Linux command line, which is what makes the command line such a powerful tool in Linux. Intrigued? Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification icon to make sure you're notified when the next episode is released. If you have any questions about today's episode, or maybe want to correct something that I got wrong, please let me know in the comments down below. In the meantime, I really hope you've enjoyed this episode and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.